Today, we're going to talk about the hidden logic that turns a large language model from just a cool tool into a genuine teammate. We're talking about AI agents that can think, plan, and tackle complex problems all on their own.
Look, we've all been blown away by what LLMs can do. You give them a prompt, you get an answer. But what happens when the job is way too big for a single shot? I'm talking about tasks like, hey, plan my company's entire annual offsite, or do a deep dive on the competitive landscape for our new product. A single prompt just isn't going to cut it. And that's the fundamental limit we need to get past.
So the solution is to build something called an Agentic system. Now, this is different. It doesn't just follow a single command. It's given a goal. It can actually perceive what's going on, make decisions, and take action all by itself to get the job done. This is the leap from being a simple calculator to a real problem-solving partner.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to build up this AI teammate step by step. First, we'll look at how they learn to think in a chain. Then we'll see how they can correct their own mistakes. After that, we'll get into how they become strategic planners. And finally, we'll tie it all together and see why this stuff really matters. Okay, our very first building block is a really simple but super powerful idea called prompt chaining. The whole concept is about taking a huge, kind of vague task and breaking it down into a series of smaller, much clearer steps. So instead of one giant, messy prompt asking for an email about market trends, we build a little assembly line. As you can see here, we have a market analyst agent whose only job is to summarize a long report. Its output then feeds directly to a trend analyst who pulls out the top 3 trends. And finally, a documentation writer takes those trends and drafts the final email. See how that works? The output of one step becomes the input for the next.
So the magic word here is decomposition. By breaking the problem down, we're actually reducing the cognitive load on the model at each stage. Each agent has one very specific, very clear job to do. And this modular approach doesn't just make the process easier to manage, it seriously boosts the accuracy and reliability of whatever you get at the end.
Now, chaining is great, but what happens if one of those agents in the chain makes a mistake? Well, that's where our next power-up comes in. It's called the reflection pattern, and it gives an agent the incredible ability to check its own work and actually improve it. The reflection pattern is basically an internal quality control loop. The agent produces something that it stops, puts on its critic hat, and really evaluates its own work against a set of rules. And then it goes back and refines its original output based on that tough feedback. A really effective way to set this up is with 2 distinct roles. You have your producer agent. Its only job is to do the initial work, to generate the code or the text or whatever. And then you have a critic agent, which is specifically prompted to be a ruthless reviewer looking for bugs, flaws, and ways to make it better. This whole separation of duties makes the final product so much stronger.
Let's make this super concrete. Imagine we give our producer agent a pretty standard coding challenge. Write a Python function that can calculate a factorial. So it goes ahead and spits out its first draft of the code. And this is where the critic agent shines. It doesn't just say, nope, that's wrong. It gives specific, actionable feedback. It points out a classic edge case that was missed. The code doesn't know what to do with negative numbers. This isn't just a complaint. It's a crystal clear instruction on how to fix it.
And here is where it all comes together. The producer agent takes that very specific feedback and goes back to refine its original code. It adds the error handling, and now you have a version that's way more robust, more accurate, and ultimately a lot more useful. This back and forth is what really drives quality.
So you're probably wondering, when should you actually use this? Well, the rule of thumb is pretty simple. You use reflection whenever quality and accuracy matter more than just raw speed. It's perfect for things like generating a really polished article, writing and debugging code, or creating detailed plans where getting it right the first time is absolutely critical.
Okay, so we've seen how agents can follow steps and even correct their own work. But the final leap, the thing that makes an agent a true teammate, is when it can create the plan itself. And that brings us to the planning pattern.
Planning is where the agent graduates from just being a doer to being a strategist. You give it a big, ambitious goal, and the agent itself breaks that down into an actionable, step-by-step plan. It literally creates its own roadmap. But the most advanced planners, they don't just create one single path.
And a fantastic example of this in the wild is Google's Deep Research Agent.
When you give it a complex topic, it doesn't just create one linear plan. No, it uses a method that's a lot like a tree of thoughts. Instead of a simple chain, it explores multiple possible paths at once, creating this branching tree of ideas and potential next steps.
And that plan is totally adaptive. It starts with a really broad exploration. That's like growing the first branches of the tree. Then, and this is the brilliant part, it analyzes the results from those different branches. It evaluates which paths look promising and which ones are dead ends. Based on that reasoning, it literally prunes the bad branches and then conducts new, more focused searches to build on the good ones. It's basically an intelligent search algorithm for solving problems.
So we've got these three really powerful patterns, right? Chaining, reflection, and planning. But the real magic, the part where this gets truly transformative, is when we start combining them into one cohesive system. Just look at how they can work together like a specialized little team. You have an agent using the planning pattern to act as the strategist, building out that tree of thoughts to map out all the possible solutions. Then a specialist researcher agent uses a tool like web search to actually go down those paths. And all the while, you have a critic agent using reflection to review the quality of the info being found, helping the planner decide which branches of the tree are worth exploring further. So the crucial point is this. Putting these patterns together unlocks a totally new level of ability. The agent isn't just following a plan anymore. It's creating, evaluating, and adapting that plan in real time. This combination lets the system navigate through fuzzy, ambiguous problems and bounce back from dead ends, something a simple linear process could never, ever do. It truly becomes a teammate. Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. As these AI teammates get better and better at planning, at reasoning, at self-correction, the way we work is going to change. The question isn't just, what can AI do anymore? It's, how will we redefine collaboration when one of our most capable partners is an AI? Something to chew on. Thanks for tuning in.